Well, I suppose we can get going. I don't know, is it 10 o'clock yet? Are we right on time?
11.
I mean, excuse me, 11 o'clock? I'm on range time yet. We're an hour behind you guys. You know. But listen.
Did you think you got one more time this year? Okay. Sue thinks there's one more person.
No.
That was supposed to be here at that call.
Well, we got 2 minutes yet. So maybe they're on Senate time. You know. They'll show up a couple minutes or half hour late and miss the fun. So I'm going to get started here. But, you know, first of all, I got to thank all of you for showing up. You know, I kind of miss you. Now that I'm not on the gubernatorial trail anymore, you guys don't call, you don't write, nothing, you know, so I had to do this just to see you again because I miss you so much. But to get serious, you know, these are serious times that we're in, and there's a lot of pain out there. And just like in 1982 when Rudy Perpich came back to run for governor again, and his whole campaign and that pretty, you know, devastating recession back then was about jobs, jobs, jobs. This whole election is about jobs. People are spending what little savings they have left to survive. I think we had 143,000 people last week still on unemployment insurance. Folks are worrying about paying for their kids' college, tuition escalating and everything else. And I've been listening to Tom Emmer on the campaign trail and listening to him in these debates that you folks are carrying on your stations and reporting it on your papers, and it's just the same old thing. The same old thing. Let's give tax cuts to businesses, tax cuts to the wealthy, and we're going to create jobs. And you know, I went back and I looked with statistics from Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. These are, you know, coming right out of Governor Pawlenty's administration. And if you look at job creation, when Rudy Perpich came back in his 8 years, he, on average, and I'm talking averages now, and you know sometimes I don't like to talk about averages, but it's the best way to present this, 34,400 jobs a year on average during Rudy Perpich's administration. During the Arne Carlson years, 45,200 jobs on average. Ventura, when the tax cuts started here in Minnesota in the middle of his administration, or actually the beginning of it, in 99, 23,500 jobs. And Governor Tim Pawlenty in his 8 years has created a whopping 185 jobs a year. So I don't know, you know, the press should pick up on this. These tax cuts to the wealthy, just what Tom Emmer's talking about again, and today he's got Newt Gingrich in town, who Newt will be talking about the same old thing, give tax cuts to create jobs. But where do they create them? You know where they're being created, and they're not being created in this country. So, you know, I've been listening to Emmer, as I said, talking about putting more money in people's pockets. But he kicked off his campaign by shooting himself in the lip and talking about cutting wages, tip credit for waiters and waitresses and bartenders and other tipped employees. Talking about $100,000 a year waitress and waiter jobs. Now, you know, I know Tom Emmer, he's got quite a brood at home, and I'm sure he's never told any of his kids to go out and be a waiter or waitress instead of go to college. And I got a $100 bill bet on that one in my pocket, as you guys know. I showed it to you. So actions speak louder than words, and it's the same when you look about Tom Emmer trying to pick other people's pockets, prevailing wage, voted to reduce the prevailing wage on an amendment on the House floor, to lower prevailing wage and allow cities and counties to not pay it, taking money right out of the pockets of people that build our highways and build our schools and take care of our infrastructure in this state, whether they're equipment operators, truck drivers, plumbers, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, whatever. He's going to pick their pockets too. And the unemployment extension, we got the stimulus money. Tom Emmer voted no on that. all these people out of work, all the pain they're going through, some of this money sustaining families that would otherwise, who knows what would happen to them, and he votes no. So, you know, we can talk about the bonding bill, and I know you folks have already reported on his votes on flood relief here in the last session. But, you know, it strikes me as somewhat hypocritical when the governor and Tom Emmer say government can't do anything right. Yet next week we're going to have a special session because government has to step in and help those poor people who have been devastated by that flood down in southeastern Minnesota. And, you know, whether it's a bridge collapsing or whatever, it's always the federal government that has to step in and help. And, you know, the governor doesn't want to take federal money. He's criticizing President Obama about the stimulus package and federal money, but he accepted $2 billion of it to balance the budget, and he's going to accept federal money again next week to help those people with their poor plight and their homes being destroyed and businesses and communities being destroyed. Tom Emmer has voted against all of those bonding bills that help keep our infrastructure. And you talk about the stimulus package. On the way down, I went by, when I left the range, from Cloquet down to here, 4 different job sites where people are working because of the stimulus package on 35. 4 different sites on the way down. So don't tell me that people aren't working. My goal, ever since I've been elected, when I was running for governor, was to talk about creating jobs, manufacturing jobs, good jobs in the United States of America and here in Minnesota. So let's talk about that. And, you know, I've got these props behind me, these flags, many of them union made, all of them made in the USA. Some of these from my friend Ken Millman, who helped with my banners at the convention up in Duluth, depicting some of the battles that we won our freedom from the British in. And, you know, I think there's a Betsy Ross flag here. There's one from Saratoga where we won a battle. And I think another one from the Battle of Princeton where George Washington basically turned the tide to create this country. And, you know, it disturbs me sometimes when people wave the flag, but they don't want to make that flag with American workers here in the United States of America. Tom Emmer voted against my flag bill in 2007 to make sure at least that the American flag was made in America. And, you know, I did that out of respect for the American worker. I thought if anything should be made in this country, it should be the flag. I think if Tom Emmer had his way, and some of the other Republicans that talk about free enterprise, we'd be building aircraft carriers in China to save a few bucks with slave labor. That's not my idea of helping the American worker. I brought that solar panel out here today, folks, to show you another example of creating jobs, and in this case, legislation that says in order to get a rebate from Xcel with the money that they put into the Renewable Energy Fund back in 95 or 96 when we did the Prairie Island, you know, that money was going to a lot of research, and we finally, last year, in the session, got $21 million over the next 5 years, where the consumers, the customers of Xcel Energy will be able to pay off in 5 to 5.5 years, putting solar panels on their homes, pay them off, and get the benefit of not only helping the environment, not only creating jobs and helping Minnesota companies, because they have to be made in Minnesota to get that rebate from Xcel. Where was Tom Emmer? He was off gallivanting around, I suppose, on his quest for the governor's office, but he didn't even vote on that bill. And I'd venture to say if he were on the House floor that day, he would have voted no again on jobs for Minnesotans and jobs for Americans. So, you know, I want a governor that is creative, that realizes that government and business can work together, which has been proven time and time again where I come from, that we can create jobs working together. But all Tom does is vote no, no, no. And so, you know, I'm here today to remind the working people of the state of Minnesota how whether it's jobs, whether it's waiters and waitresses picking their pockets, or construction workers picking their pockets or voting no on jobs for Americans and jobs for Minnesotans, voting against those people on unemployment insurance and their extensions, that all Tom Emmer does is vote no. And I don't think we should have a governor that just votes no all the time and proposes the same old economic ideas that have proven to not work. So I would urge the Minnesota voters this November to vote no, just like Tom Emmer does, and vote no against Tom Emmer. And so with that, folks, again, I'm glad to see you here. I've missed you, and I'll open it up to questions.
Who should they vote yes for?
Well, I know who I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote for a guy that's got experience, a guy by the name of Mark Dayton, who, under Rudy Perpich, was involved in those years. 1984, as an example, where 72,800 jobs were created that year in Minnesota, coming off the back of, as I said, a serious recession back then, who's got the experience, who knows every corner of this state. You know, Mark Dayton got a big heart, and he still believes, like I do, that government and business can work together to create jobs. And let me give you an example. Mark Dayton got the endorsement of the steelworkers, I might add, not until after the convention was over, because the steelworkers, as individual unions all across the state, were for me. But they never forgot that when North Star Steel, the old North Star Steel, and I can't remember its new name right now, when they were bought out by a Brazilian company as a U.S. senator, and they were going to go non-union and ramp it down, Mark Dayton went down and met with those owners in Brazil and kept that facility open. And that's what Rudy Perpich did as a governor. That's what Mark Dayton would do as a governor. I know he's going to knock on every door. I can tell you folks this from the bottom of my heart, knowing Mark Dayton, that Mark Dayton wouldn't have waited till the last minute like Tim Pawlenty did to do something to keep those manufacturing jobs at the Ford Motor Plant. He would have been creative. There would have been proposals to work together and keep that facility open. And whether it's Ford or any other business in this state, I'm very confident that Mark Dayton will be all over this state and all over this nation like Rudy Perpich was, to make sure that those 143,000 Minnesotans that are still on unemployment and the thousands and tens of thousands that have dropped off and aren't even on the radar screen anymore can get back to work, have a prosperous job, and take care of their families, because like I've said time and time again, if a person has a good job and has a good education, gets that good job, a lot of those other problems that a family face take care of themselves. And that's what we need to do in this state, and that's who I'm voting for. The guy's got a heart as big as the Mesaba Range, and he's my friend, and I'm going to make sure that we get a governor, that a Democratic farmer labor governor that believes in the same values I do, putting people to work, not picking people's pockets, not lowering their income, and making sure that their families have a decent income to take care of themselves.
Do you recall how many no votes there were on the flag bill?
I think there were about 40-some, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember. I know I got a number of Republican votes, and that I recall my good friend Larry Howe standing up and talking the story about how he was like a great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandnephew of Betsy Ross, and how he agreed with me. I think I got about 20, not quite 20 Republican votes, but I'm not sure. But
materials in your package.
I think you've got it in there. There's a list of his no votes. I don't know what the actual vote was.
The gold one? Sorry.
Yeah, you guys I gotta do your homework all the time, I'll tell you. I should be on the payroll, but there are some votes in here. So,
How has that law worked out? Has anybody run into problems because they were using flags not made in the U.S.?
we only had one instance that I know of, and somebody saw at, I can't remember, was it at some foreign-owned company that has business here in Minnesota that, where I think it was last year or the year before, wasn't selling Made in USA flags, and they got them off the shelf right away. And who's going to challenge the flag? I know, if anything, that would be one, you know, bill I passed that for Made in America, Made in Minnesota wouldn't be constitutionally challenged. I know this one won't with the solar panels either because it's our money, and it's a rebate to our Minnesota citizens, and I'm glad to see that the consumer is going to benefit from XL putting that money into that fund, and we're actually going to give them the benefit of that fund. Let them, as I said, help the environment, and also get that meter of theirs to spin backwards many times and feed the system and pay it off in 5.5 years with some creative financing. So,
How much does an average taconite miner make a year?
an average taconite miner, it depends, on average. Like I said, I never like to use averages because
What's the
like
range then?
Huh?
A range, just an idea.
Well,
What
there's a lot of overtime going on, but I would say the average Minnesota miner makes in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. They're some of the highest manufacturing incomes in the state. And that's because they got a good union behind them. That's because they fought since my grandfathers came from Italy and Croatia for good wages and good benefits. And I had a guy put it in perspective for me not too long ago. My grandfather, he said, came from Croatia and fought for pensions and fought for health care and fought for good working conditions. And here I am. He was a salaried person, had taken a salary job at Evelyn Mines. He said, my pension is almost gone. I don't have any health care anymore, and all the things we fought for 100 years ago, we're going to have to fight for again.
So if you had a couple of the miners, maybe a miner and a spouse, who both did fairly well, higher than average, they'd be pretty close to Dayton's tax the rich?
Well, I think I only had, in St. Louis County, and St. Louis County is hard to average because, you've got that big, vast space between Duluth and the range. But I think I had a little over like 1.5% of the people that were in that upper tax bracket when we gave those tax cuts in 2000 or 1999 and 2000. So there aren't many, but I think the overwhelming majority of people that I represent believe in the same philosophy that I do, that the fairest tax is an income tax, and that, the more you make, proportionally, the more you should pay. Instead of paying regressive taxes like property taxes and some of these proposals on sales taxes by Mr. Horner. Let's talk about a tax on clothing. I'm wearing a pretty expensive suit, and I'm proud of it because, as I've always said, my suit is made by Unite Here union workers in the United States of America. I don't have that big of an income. I'd gladly release my income figures, to you guys. You'd feel sorry for me. You'd probably be pitching in to help me out, buy beer or something. But anyway, but what happens to me if I spend $500 because I have a belief and a philosophy that I should support my fellow American worker, and I got to pay 7% now almost on a nice suit? And it's not a proportional tax, it's a regressive tax. And it's one Mr. Horner should talk about because, they talk about, well, you can get a rebate after the fact. How many people itemize? How many poor people itemize when they're doing their income taxes that are going to be able to get that rebate or figure it out? So it doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. Mark Dayton is being honest about raising revenue. He's raising revenue in what I think is the proper, fair manner. And, we'll see what happens in this election. But I'm confident that we're going to finally have a DFL governor after a drought of 20-some years. So. Anything else? Come on, I miss you guys now. Jeez. Can somebody call Rachel up and tell her to come over here?
He doesn't like you. Are you actively campaigning for Dayton? Are you making speeches? Are you talking to clubs or anything like that?
I'm actively campaigning for Dayton. In fact, today we're picking up signs. I think we'll be putting them out. Nice 2x4 signs, if I'm not mistaken, that say your DFL team on the range that I've helped pay for, that say Dayton, Oberstar, Thomasoni, and Rukavina. And the other range legislators are doing the same thing, and we're picking them up today, and we're going to be putting them out. Those are the types of things I'm doing to make sure that Mark Dayton gets elected governor. Yesterday, day before yesterday, we had a grand opening of our DFL office in Virginia. I was there again promoting Mark and the whole DFL ticket and the local DFL legislators. So I'm confident that we're going to have a very successful year.
Would you like a position in the administration?
Listen, I wanted to be governor, because I think I would have done a great job, and it didn't go there. But I'm supporting the guy who I think is going to be the next governor because I believe in him, and I'm not doing it because I want any position or that. I have fun on the House of Representatives. What would you folks do without me there? You'd have a hard time getting some good quotes. So that's not something that I'm worried about right now. I'm just worried about all the people of the state getting the benefits of having Mark Dayton as their governor and being put back to work and being helped with their children's education and tuition and taking care of people in our nursing homes, which I'll tell you, what's going on in this state in the area of taking care of our most vulnerable citizens saddens me, because it's not Minnesota nice. I've got hospitals, regional medical center and a hospital in my district, the Virginia Regional Medical Center, that's been there for years and years and years, has an attached nursing home, getting penalized under federal rules because of it. Lost money the last couple of years, just like a lot of publicly owned hospitals have lost money when we've cut Medicare and Medicaid, which 70% of the people in that nursing home where my mother and father died are, if you go down that hallway, are on Medicaid and Medicare. And that really hurts in these institutions to try to make ends meet. When you're feeding somebody bologna sandwiches a couple days a week to try to make ends meet, it isn't, I don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it's kind, and it's going on all over, whether it's at a nursing home or whether it's at a developmental achievement center where we have our mentally handicapped folks and their programs being cut. It's not the way we should treat people. And I know the big heart that Mark Dayton has, and I know he'll treat all of those people well. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all for showing up again. It's great to see you. Come on, call me and write me once in a while. I'm feeling lonely out there, so. Yeah, I'm a nobody. Thanks for coming. Who's governor? That's the most important thing we're talking about. Without that federal $2 billion stimulus money to balance our budget last year, we would have seen horrendous cuts in health and human service. And in my case, where I chair the Higher Ed and Economic Development Committee, we would have seen $200 million in cuts or tuition increases at our publicly owned higher education facilities. We would have seen, without the federal stimulus money, people dropping off of unemployment insurance.
What happens if Mark gets elected then?
If Mark gets elected, at least he's being honest that we need revenue. Because as I've been saying in this campaign, anybody that's running for governor that says that they don't need revenue to balance our budget next year is either a BSer or nuts in the head. And I know Tom Emmer, and he's not a BSer.